Halloween is around the corner and we are turning to our unlikely hero, the Mario brother in green, to save the day. Luigi has the self-confidence of a mouse, but he'll keep humming his own theme song to keep himself motivated on his epic quest to save his big bro. After being the only one to escape the clutches of King Boo, we'll strap on our Ghostbuster vacuum and we're off to explore the massive hotel in Luigi's Mansion 3. Throughout our exploration, Luigi comes across an immaculate dining room with a large spread of delicious looking food, in particular a pile of crusty baguettes, flaky croissants, and some soft, salty pretzels. Unfortunately, Luigi quickly goes on to beat up the hotel's only baker, Chef Soulfflé. Because of that, we're forced to provide our own food in celebration of this fantastic game. With the game complete, I'm headed to the kitchen, and what could I possibly be planning with this much salt? Pretzels! Today we'll be exploring two different recipes since some pretzel recipes require a few ingredients that are not commonly found in the kitchen. First up, I'll be making a delicious soft pretzel that is more of an American imitation of the real deal, followed with my best attempt at a true Bavarian pretzel. For the initial soft pretzel, we'll start with 1 1/2 cups of lukewarm milk heated to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. To this, we'll be adding 1 packet or 7 grams of active dry yeast and whisking the two together. Let this sit for 10 minutes until the mixture gets frothy. Then in our stand mixer bowl, we are combining 562 grams or about 4 1/2 cups of all-purpose flour with 2 tablespoons of light brown sugar. Whisk them together to break up all of the clumps of brown sugar before attaching the bowl to a stand mixer with a dough hook. Start the mixer on low and slowly pour in our milk and yeast mixture, followed by 4 tablespoons of melted and completely cooled butter. Crank the mixer speed up to medium-low and let it knead for 2 to 3 minutes. Once the dough is fully formed, sprinkle in 2 teaspoons of salt and let the stand mixer continue kneading for 7 more minutes. Now I'm not going to show you the dough mixing here because you'll get to see that while we're mixing our next batch of pretzels. Once kneaded, I'm going to pull a neat trick here where I try to balance the dough in one hand while oiling up our stand mixer bowl with the other hand before bringing the dough into a top ball and plopping it back down into the bowl. Cover the bowl with lightly oiled plastic wrap and let it sit at room temperature for 1 hour until doubled in size. Take a look at that rise we got. Now we'll oil down our work surface before scraping our dough out onto it. Make sure to also give your bench scraper a little oil. We don't want anything sticking to the dough throughout this process. We'll cut the dough up into 8 even pieces and form each of them into a rough ball. I like to pre-shape my dough rolls into little sausage shapes because it will make rolling them out much easier. Rest our dough logs for 10 minutes to let the gluten relax before rolling out each piece of dough. We're aiming for a rope around 26 inches or 65 centimeters long. Form the rope into a pretzel by bringing each end up and twisting once, then folding over and pinching the edges down. Place your perfectly formed pretzel onto a lightly greased sheet of parchment paper on a baking tray and finish the remaining pretzels. These pretzels are then getting a bath in a solution consisting of 10 cups of boiling water mixed with 2/3 of a cup of baking soda. Make sure to sprinkle the baking soda in a little bit at a time because it will foam up and it will make a volcano out of boiling water if you add it all at once. Once the baking soda is fully dissolved, we'll add each pretzel into the solution one at a time, letting them soak for 15 seconds on each side, and then placing them on a wire rack over paper towels to drip dry. The pretzels will puff up a bit while boiling, and now are quite spongy. Once dried for a minute, we can transfer the pretzels back to the parchment-lined and oiled baking sheet and brush them with an egg wash consisting of 1 room temperature egg and 1 tablespoon of water. Brush lightly so as not to deflate the dough. Then sprinkle each pretzel with pretzel salt or coarse sea salt. These are finally ready to be placed in a 450 degree Fahrenheit or 230 degrees Celsius oven for 12 to 14 minutes until they develop a dark brown crust. While those are off baking, let's get started on our true Bavarian pretzels. These will start with 1 1/2 cups of water heated to 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius. Whisk it together with 13 grams of instant dry yeast and let the mixture set for 5 minutes until the yeast has just started to bloom. Now here's the first huge difference in these pretzels. Instead of sugar, we are using an ingredient called diastatic malt powder. This will make our pretzels savory and intensely flavorful. I would 100% suggest you use this in all future pretzel recipes. We're mixing 14 grams or about 3.5 teaspoons of our diastatic malt powder with 2 teaspoons of salt and 640 grams of bread flour. Whisk these together before attaching our bowl to a stand mixer with a dough hook. I said a dough hook. There it is. Start mixing on low while adding our milk and yeast mixture, and see? I told you get to see the dough mixing this time. Very exciting, isn't it? For this one, we're going to let it mix on medium-low speed for at least 10 minutes until a smooth dough forms. Add in additional flour or water 1 tablespoon at a time until the dough has the right consistency. When the dough is smooth and just a little tacky, we're going to add 1.5 tablespoons of room temperature unsalted butter. Mix for another 2 to 3 minutes until the butter is well incorporated. Then wrangle the dough into a heavily oiled and comically too small bowl covered in plastic wrap and let prove at room temperature for 1 hour. And this is why we oil our plastic wrap. Otherwise, I'd have lost half of this dough just trying to get it off. Punch the dough down to deflate and roll it out onto an oiled work surface. Again, we will be rolling this out into top balls, but this time flatten them out into little pancakes before rolling them up. Once rolled, let these rest for 10 minutes to allow the gluten to relax, and then start rolling them out to be at least 20 inches long. If the dough keeps contracting when rolled, let it rest for another 5 minutes before finishing the rolling and forming it into a pretzel. Place these pretzels onto a parchment-lined and oiled baking sheet and let prove at room temperature for 15 minutes before transferring them to a fridge for 1 hour. Now here's the next big difference when making a true German pretzel. Instead of baking soda, we will be using a lye solution. The scientific name for lye is sodium hydroxide, which will make a highly basic solution, and we need to be extra careful with it. If you are not comfortable using lye in your baking, that is totally fine. Just use the same baking soda method from the first pretzels. When working with lye, you want to always have white distilled vinegar on hand to neutralize any spilled or splashed lye solution. Use food-safe gloves to protect your skin and safety glasses to protect your eyes from any splashes. Chemistry safety goggles would be even better if you have them, but if your glasses do not protect your eyes from fumes, make sure to keep your face far away from the solution. If lye solution gets on your skin at any point, rinse the area with a weak acid like white vinegar and lots of water. We are creating a 3% lye solution, which means that we want to have 3% lye beads by weight added to our water. The easiest way to do this is with 1,000 grams of water and 30 grams of lye beads. Use filtered or bottled water. Minerals in tap water can react with the lye and cause the solution to sputter. Always add your lye to water. If you do it the other way around, there is a chance it can sputter and splash, which can be very dangerous. Also, make sure to use a glass bowl for this. Metallic or plastic bowls could be adversely affected and your pretzels will end up tasting really weird. Take the pretzels out of the fridge once your lye bath is prepared. Then, with your gloves still on, dip the pretzels into the solution one at a time for 10 seconds on each side and remove them to a wire rack. Once drained, the pretzels can be transferred back to the parchment-lined baking sheet. When disposing of lye solution, you should see your area's regulations. In many areas, you can neutralize the solution with a weak acid like vinegar. To do this, add white vinegar to the lye solution by half volume. In this case, I am slowly adding 500 grams of vinegar to my solution. Then, carefully dispose of the neutralized solution with plenty of extra water. Finalize your pretzels with a good sprinkle of coarse sea salt and score them along the thickest part with a sharp knife before placing them in a 425 degree Fahrenheit or 218 degrees Celsius oven for 15 to 20 minutes. Don't these pretzels look amazing? Now before we get into tasting them, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more video game foods and let me know in the comments down below if there are any games that you'd like to see featured. Now on the top row here, we've got the all-American soft pretzels with an egg wash, so they turn very deep brown in the oven. The crust on these is pretty pliable and quite smooth. The Bavarian pretzels on the other hand stayed a bit lighter with a hard, crispy crust. You can see bubbling all over the surface of these, which is caused by the reaction with the lye bath. These ended up a little tighter knit than I hoped, so next time I would make sure to roll them out a little bit longer. Let's break off a chunk and see how it tastes. This pretzel brings back memories of baseball games, just without the garlic french fries. The crust has a slight crunch and the interior is light and fluffy. It is slightly sweet from the brown sugar, and I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. Tearing into the Bavarian pretzel, you can see how crunchy the crust is. The bread flour gives it much more body, and the diastatic malt powder gives it an incredible depth of flavor that the other pretzel lacked. In my opinion, this pretzel is truly superior, and they are the best pretzels I have ever made. I'm going to take the rest of these as a snack to go. Hope you enjoyed this recipe, and if you want to see more, come check out my other platforms through the links below in the video description. I stream games on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday starting at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and try to find new recipes to make. On my Instagram, I have close-ups of all of my recipes and many other kitchen adventures. I'll see you next week for the perfect Halloween dessert.